Welcome to Rational Discourse Weekly. It's Monday, January 14th. I'm Michael.
And I'm William, and we're here today to talk about whether or not atheists should be vocal about their disbelief and kind of what that overall means for society as a whole. So stay tuned. All right, so this week I wanted to talk a bit about how we feel or the different options are for atheists being more or less public about their atheism, whether or not they should be social about it, if they should tell everyone they know, if they should try to convince others or proselytize, what the options are there. I just got back from Vegas. I went to CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, and while I was in Vegas, I saw Penn and Teller live. This is the second time I've seen it. My girlfriend hadn't seen it before, so. And one of the reasons why this topic is interesting to me is Penn Jillette, who's one of my he's one of my favorite atheists, at least in the
Public sphere.
in the celebrity world. I guess you could call him a minor celebrity of some sort. He's been on various news channels. He was on a Wendy Williams show recently. He was on.
He's as
The
famous
View.
as we will ever hope to be.
Yeah. And he's I've read one of his books, and he's a pretty huge proponent for atheists being loud and proud. The same way.
Wait, can we have parades?
We can have parades.
Can there be pride
we
parades?
We can have conventions. Well, I would argue that we're probably at pride parades, meaning that if I had to guess, there might be more believers or non-believers at pride parades.
I just want to see what atheist floats look like.
Flying spaghetti monsters. That would be amazing.
We should. Next Thanksgiving, man.
Yeah.
Macy's Day. When we have the Thanksgiving Day, or Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, and we get the flying spaghetti monster in there, we've officially achieved equality in American public discourse. We have a new goal, everyone. Get to it.
The conventions, but he's for it the same way that he's for believers proselytizing and talking about their beliefs and stuff. And it brings to an interesting, and I'll get your opinion in a second, it brings me to some interesting thoughts, because I feel like if everyone was quiet about what they believed in, like let's say the religious never talked about their religion outside of other people that believed exactly what they believed, and
if it all stopped at the church door, basically.
If the atheists were closeted and never had conversations with people that weren't also atheists about their disbelief, I feel that there really wouldn't be any growth of ideas. There wouldn't be any. Now, I think this is unfortunately a topic that's. It's very hard for us to just outright prove that there is no God in order to try to.
No, it's logically
convert
impossible.
People. But we can get to a place to make the steps logically to make others see why the possibility of a God is extremely unlikely, and why it's
no. You can raise the bar so high that it's virtually impossible for God to sneak over.
Yeah.
Like there is an elephant between William and I, sitting right here. You can't see it, hear it, touch it. Well, I can present a whole lot of evidence that makes it so ridiculous to believe that this is here that at some point you basically give up the belief.
But
you simply can't rationally hold it, and your brain will kick it out.
The funny thing is most people, religious included, would say that's ridiculous. Why would I ever believe that?
Well, yeah. But that's, to be fair, I'm not equating the belief in God with the belief that there's an elephant sitting between us. But the idea is that you can take a concept that seems, it's basically impossible. It could be a very tiny elephant, be an invisible elephant. It could be a dark matter elephant that doesn't react to normal scientific probing. We can't really see it or measure its effects.
Could be the ghost of an elephant that died.
Yeah.
That decides to haunt us.
Yeah. And so, obviously, I have to start doing a lot more backbending in order to justify my position again and again and again. And at some point, you can basically dismiss me. And at some point, I imagine most people, though not all, will give up the ghost and say, okay, I admit it's pretty stupid to believe that there's an elephant sitting in the room with us.
Yeah.
So
So, wanted to know a little bit about what you think. Obviously, I believe, as someone that has been a relatively recently converted atheist, someone that decided to break out of the dark and where I just didn't really care and start talking about why I don't believe and why others shouldn't believe.
Wait, was this when I knocked on your door in my my white shirt with tie my pamphlets?
No, I was
already. When I converted you,
I was well converted already.
Oh.
Sorry, your pitch sucked.
My pitch sucked. It was too late. Damn.
But just want to know what you think and what.
Well, I should imagine it's fairly obvious that I think William and I are both on the same page as far as wanting to put ourselves out there. I mean, we are putting our faces on the interwebs, advocating a position that many people find horribly unpopular. But I think there are different ways you can justify that. And so to me, the reason it's super important is not because, let's say, the belief that there is a God is inherently dangerous. I mean, in a vacuum, literally just that thing on paper does me no harm, potentially or actually.
Yeah.
Unless I paper cut myself. I don't know. I don't think that counts.
Man dies from Bible wound.
That's God getting me in very minor ways. But I do think there's the problem that this belief does not exist in a vacuum. And so we have to look at the effects of that belief. To me, the belief in God, through its various manifestations, through various faiths, is potentially extremely dangerous. Almost apocalyptically so. I mean, there is the chance, if you have people who... I mean, there is a strong historical trend of supporting Israel because in America, fundamentalist Christians see the reestablishment of the Jewish state, which will hopefully, in their eyes, lead to the rebuilding of the Temple of Solomon, usher in the end of days. That's an end goal. And these people are in positions of power. They are in the White House talking to some of the president's ears. We had Jerry Falwell, who's someone who has held beliefs similar to this, to my knowledge, who was a close advisor to Reagan, and who apparently sat in on national security meetings during the Cold War. This is a man who was talking in the ear of a guy who has his finger on the button during one of the most heightened periods of potential destruction in human history. I mean, it's unbelievable that these beliefs get so high in a sense. And if you really think that ushering in the end of days is going to bring your Lord and Savior back and take you to heaven, don't you actively want that? Wouldn't you work for that? Well, I think the answer is that many people will. Yes, absolutely. They want these things to happen. And so I remember right after Obama got reelected, how many posts did you see on Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and all that about people who were basically like, yeah, it's the end of time, grab your guns and your Bible and hunker down. It's coming. And their belief in their God within their tradition affects the way they're going to interpret current world events and the way they're going to react to them. And that's potentially terrifying.
When talking about world events, this is slightly less impactful than the end of the world, but we've seen it with civil rights. We've seen it through time with civil rights, with everything from slavery to women's rights to now gay rights.
Yeah, we're dealing with it right now.
These are things that at their core are only driven by religion. And these are people...
Look in France right now. They had just had massive protests over the weekend contesting the fact that the president and his party and his government have basically said by mid-year they're going to sign into effect a law that will legalize gay marriage in France and will also allow, if I'm not mistaken, for adoption of children by gay couples. Now, France already has civil unions that give them basically equal rights under the law as far as estates and all that if people pass away or medical visitation rights, things like that. But now the fact that it's going to be marriage and it's going to allow them parental rights, basically.
Not only parental rights, but it's here in the States, because people complain the same thing. They already have civil unions. It's it's a combination of things.
They don't in most states.
They want literal equality.
Yeah.
I watched the movie Lincoln recently, and they were talking about the emancipation, the freedom of slaves, and it was the same thing. They were building up to literal equality, race equality, to say, hey, these not only are these black people free, but they can vote.
Yeah.
That's what it was building up to. That obviously wasn't in the movie. That came much later. But
I mean, in France, they just had this. I think it was 35 to 40,000 people converged on the Eiffel Tower, and it was a coalition that's been basically orchestrated largely by the Catholic Church, who in the States has had the same sort of defensive stance against marriage equality.
Yeah.
And they've actually reached out to other Protestant groups. There's a very large Muslim minority that they also brought in. But the interesting thing is that when all these people who were interviewed, or all of the reasons that were given, were religious reasons. You don't hear too many secularists, humanists, atheists, agnostics, free thinkers, I guess you could toss them all in there, arguing against this. And I think it's because you can't find a good reason outside of, well, that guy told me so. Being God or your imam or whatever it is. And I think that's very telling. It goes back to the point of these beliefs that people hold because of their belief in God and because of that belief within the tradition that they're born or have chosen to be a part of, that affects their public actions.
And it affects people's lives.
Yeah.
In the case of the adoption thing, these are people that actively want kids. Mm-hmm. And if the laws like this don't change, they live their lives without being able to raise a kid.
And not just that, they lived it because other people told them they can't.
Yeah.
They were denied it.
They don't have the same freedoms we have.
I can literally have all the kids I want, as long as I can find a woman who's willing to bear them, basically. I can be a terrible father, and as long as I basically don't cross certain fairly extreme thresholds, I get to do whatever I want with those kids. These are people who would have to go through basically public scrutiny just to earn the right to even think about adopting children. And then you have to go through an adoption process, which is generally fairly stringent. I mean, at least
expensive and long.
These are people who you would think would make fantastic parents for the very fact that they're going through all this effort. It's not like I got drunk and knocked someone up and now I'm stuck with the kid. These people are desperate to have children because they want to be loving parents. And I'm willing to put that out there. Maybe some of them, yes. Maybe there's one couple out there who are sadistic people and they're looking to just have a child sex slave. I'm pretty certain that's an absurd proposition. And the idea that authorizing this sort of institution for gay couples is somehow going to lead to the moral degradation of society.
Yeah.
Because of what are effectively paranoid beliefs. And that's why I think we have to stand up and say, not only am I going to combat you on this particular belief, but I'm going to combat you on the thing that grounds that belief. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you don't have God, you don't have religion, and you don't have your bullshit argument, that affects the way other people live. So that's why I think we need to take an evangelical stance, basically. We need to be out there, and we need to be fighting the good fight, if for no other reason to keep irrationality at bay.
There's a lot riding on this.
There's a lot of other beliefs I'm also going to fight against that aren't, theistically grounded, that are equally bad and should go, global warming deniers. At this point, I'm sorry, there's too much of a body of evidence. Evolution, same thing. Now, a lot of those are denied for religious reasons, but there are also people who just, big oil. Well, big oil isn't necessarily religiously motivated. They're profit motivated, but their product that they produce is potentially ruining the planet. So I need to be out there at least saying we need to challenge the assumptions that you're not doing something wrong, because your irrationality is potentially impactful to everyone else.
Or, like at CES, CES being the Consumer Electronics Show, and I know this is a weird segue, but they're always talking about new technology, like in cars.
Yeah.
Whichever car companies have the latest electric cars, wireless charging, automated, like Lexus has their new car that drives itself. It's, got cameras and sonar mounted everywhere. The emergence of these technologies is something that will eventually get us away from big oil. And talking about these things and hyping them up, and it's important. We just can't let big oil, we just can't let, religion, we can't let these do whatever they want unchallenged without at least voicing our opinion.
Yeah, especially if the potential consequences are as great as they seem that they could be. And let's not even get on to big corn. I mean,
this country is obsessed with corn.
All I gotta say is Mexican Coke is awesome. Thank you, Steven, for pointing that out to me. But yeah, I think that's why the passive approach, one, if you have a group of people who are actively working to expand their message while you sit there and do nothing, you seem to basically have already given up. So if you truly believe what you say you do, I don't know how you wouldn't want to be out there fighting the good fight.
Well, and in a way, I'm using this term broadly, but we're playing catch up in a way. Religion's kind of had its grasp on society for thousands of years. It's for the longest time, it was the branch of philosophy. It was science. It was
the
end all be all. The laws that dictated mankind as a whole.
Yep.
And over time, religion has slowly been releasing its grasp. Many of our laws, while they may be originally grounded in some of the ideology in modern religion, Christianity in our country in specific, over time, these things are becoming more and more secular. Our county that we live in Georgia, we can finally buy alcohol on Sunday.
Praise Jesus.
Praise Jesus. I mean, granted, I think it has to be afternoon.
Noon to 11, which, you know what? I'm fine. I'm not waking up before that anyway on my weekend if I can help it.
We'll take it. But before this very recent, election and vote, in order to buy alcohol on Sunday, you had to go to a restaurant or a bar, And
there's nowhere in the state of Georgia this was allowed. It wasn't a county by county thing. It was approved county by county. And basically all of metro area said yes, which was great. But it's pretty interesting if you map out, religious impact of a county. How important is religion to the day-to-day life or the social strata? There's no doubt that the counties, particularly in the rural areas where religious thought, I guess, is more impactful, did not approve it. Well, I think it was like 3-1 or something like that. Most counties outside of the metro area didn't. But all of metro area did.
And that's fine. It's a battle that happens over time. It's similar to the legalization of marijuana, to the gay marriage debate. Yeah. These are things, unfortunately, that generally don't happen with a wide sweep. It's how we as a country deal with states' rights and how the federal government enforces laws and so forth. But
it's interesting. It's an interesting issue because it seems relatively minor.
Yeah,
I'm sure to many of you, the thought that would even still be legal is probably somewhat disturbing, which I think to us it was, because there is no argument you can provide that does not seem to be religiously motivated, because it did not in any way actually prohibit drinking on Sunday, which the only argument you could potentially put forward was this whole social idea that, it was a day people could be sober, unless you could get to an Applebee's. I mean, it really didn't change the end result. If you were going to drink, you had plenty of ways to do it. You either stocked up on Saturday.
It just made it more difficult for people that actually wanted to drink.
You know how rough it is when you're ready to sit down and watch your Sunday football, and you realize you didn't go to the store on Saturday, and you have nothing in the house?
Yeah. Or when you lose track that it's a Sunday and you're just buying beer, you're at the supermarket,
and then you get dark and sad.
It's either dark or, depending on the place, it's not dark, but when you get to the register, she looks at you like, you can't buy that. The first time it happened to me, I was like, why?
What do you mean?
She was like, it's Sunday? And I'm like, oh, okay. Someone to me, that Sunday is just another weekend day. It's not some special holy day for me.
But again, it was a small way that someone's religious beliefs encroached on your rights as an adult human being in the United States of America to buy an alcoholic beverage of your own free will, with your own money. You weren't using food stamps, I assume.
Yeah, and I wasn't trying to drink and drive.
It was a victimless crime, and you were not allowed to do it because, Southern Baptist preachers and the like felt that it was immoral to do so. And so, of course, I'm going to get out there and say, even on this minor issue, your beliefs are encroaching on mine, on my, I think, better founded thoughts and ideas. And so, unless I push back, and this was a 20-year initiative or something like this to finally get this to ballot, put it in front of voters, and then given the chance, voters totally approved in 2/3 of the state, meaning obviously we were basically being pressured by a minority of strong-minded people to keep this, out of our hands, as if we couldn't make this decision for ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, it's a battle that we're trying to play catch up, but unless we, I don't even know if I should use the term battle. It's a debate.
It's an argument.
It's a debate or an argument that we're trying to catch up with.
Yep.
And unless we're vocal about it, you know, if I never said anything about my atheism, if I never said that I didn't believe in God, that I wasn't a Muslim, Hindu, Christian, whatever,
Yep.
people assume in this country, people assume that you're Christian.
Yeah.
And I think we should try to work away from that. And
I think the assumption should not have anything to do with your religious orientation. I think you can have an entirely constructive public discourse based solely on, is this idea good or bad on its own merits? I don't know why we have to ground these things in other terms. If it's truly bad, in a sense that is dangerous or negative, then yeah, I think we can arrive to that on a rational basis, at which point I think everyone will assent to it, and you don't get these divisions and things like that. So if we're not out there, if we're not being evangelical, if we're not pushing back a little bit, these discussions will never happen, and we can't hope to overcome some of the obstacles that we obviously feel are still out there for ourselves and for others. And so I think that's why you have to be active with it. You don't have to be an asshole about it. That's a distinction you should definitely make.
don't be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick. We'll go back to that. But you know, keep it in mind. But you know, if you happen to share our persuasions as far as your theological outlook on life, I hope that you do take time every once in a while when someone says that little underhanded comment or makes that assumption that you feel is unfounded or unjust. Stand up, challenge them on it. It's the only way we're going to get better as a species on any topic. Just to stand up and always push for the next best thing.
To evolve.
To evolve, yes. Let's throw that hot button word out there.
Well, that's it for us this week. Thanks for joining, and
go fight the good fight.
all right, intro will be quick.
I was going to say white power, but then I realized that has negative historical connotations.
White power.
Damn you, white people!
Go watch Django
Your hatred
Unchained.
of black. Also, I thought there was interesting. Sam Harris pointed out. He goes, "Look how desperately religious people cling to empirical evidence that's supposedly like, oh my god, the statue's bleeding," and like flip their shit 'cause they're like, look, it's proof. Like it's like at the back of their mind, they do crave the same sort of evidential proof for these things that
The Jesus toast.
Yeah, that we do, and like people go legitimately crazy because they feel like they're validated because
The Shroud of Turin.
oh, yeah.
When they found it, and they're like, this proves Jesus. Not like, it could have been anyone that was wrapped in this cloth.
It's like,
Yeah, it's true. It's like that's obviously a self-portrait. I mean, like
that's as a towel that someone wiped their face on and no one bothered to clean because whoever did it wasn't very important.
And then someone did carbon dating on a small amount, and like there was no way this was during Jesus'
like, it's between
time.
like 1260 and 14.
And they're like,
But carbon dating isn't real.
you obviously carbon dating isn't real.
atoms.
You obviously didn't get a large enough or an accurate sample of the shroud.
It's actually been sampled now
But-
twice by two different studies that didn't know the other one was doing the study. They were done blind,
Do you want another beer?
and they
You want
both
some?
gave the same date range, which is the best part. Yeah, okay, good.